So good evening. We are Rise Above the Grid Consultants, and today we will be presenting our Integrated Resource Plan for the Arizona Public Service Company. Arizona Public Service, or APS, is the largest utility in Arizona, serving roughly 2.7 million people, including the cities of Flagstaff, Yuma, and more than half of Phoenix. In 2019, the utility's summer peak load was 7.2 gigawatts, and it delivered 28 terawatt hours of energy with an average cost of 12 cents per kilowatt hour. The emission intensity for this year was 487 kilograms of CO2 per megawatt hour. To the left, you can see the APS service territory, which is in the gray regions of the map. The total generation mix in 2019 was 37% natural gas, 31% nuclear, 23% coal, and 9% from renewable energy. Next slide. Based on data from the utility, the EIA, and FERC, APS's load and resource table shows that the 2022 surplus is roughly 1 gigawatt of dependable capacity. In 2050, the projected capacity deficit will be approximately 10 gigawatts. Next slide. Thank you. Naturally, our analyses began with some research questions, which guided us into completing this IRP. Our research questions are the following. How far is a business as usual case from the net zero emissions case? What is the least cost pathway to a net zero APS system? What is the added cost of an all renewable system? Is it cost effective for APS to produce hydrogen to sell to third parties? And how does heat mitigation affect the pathway to net zero? Next. Our first scenario to address the 10 gigawatt capacity deficit is the business as usual case, or BAU, which maintains the existing build rate of solar and wind resources, producing roughly 4 gigawatts of renewable capacity by 2050. We assume that no further renewable or clean energy goals are met, meaning that there will be new construction of gas plants. Our net zero scenario utilizes solar, wind, storage, geothermal, and a hybrid fuel plant using biogas or hydrogen. The biogas we consider for this IRP is waste biogas with sources primarily from food, landfill, and livestock waste, making it a net zero or net negative fuel. The hydrogen fuel is produced by electrolyzers owned by APS. Non-renewable resources include nuclear power and natural gas with carbon capture and storage, or CCS. APS will meet its 2030 goals to have 45% renewable capacity and 65% clean capacity. Our last scenario is 100% renewables, which primarily consists of solar, wind, and storage. There can be a dispatchable geothermal and a hybrid biogas hydrogen plant for reliability. The APS goals will be the same for the net zero scenario, except there will be no new natural gas plant construction. Josh will continue with the capacity mix for each scenario.
Okay, so these figures show how the capacity mix changes between 2022 and 2050 for each of our scenarios. You can see that the BAU scenario has the lowest capacity overall, and 100% renewables has the highest capacity because it is the most dependent on variable resources like wind and solar. Across all of our scenarios, the high upfront cost of nuclear and geothermal plants means no new plants of these resources are built. In the BAU case specifically, with renewables limited, natural gas is the least cost alternative. And so we have our combined cycle plants and our peaker plants dominate the system. The least cost pathway to net zero involves a 20-fold increase in wind and solar capacity. We keep the existing Palo Verde nuclear plant open, and we roughly maintain the amount of gas capacity we have, but these plants get converted to use carbon capture or storage, or they get converted into the hybrid fuel plants. In 100% renewables, the system is really dependent on wind to produce energy during the nighttime. So we triple the amount of wind capacity compared to net zero. And in this case, we also maintain the same amount of gas capacity in the form of our hybrid fuel plants. The generation mix follows similar trends. Most of the energy in BAU comes from natural gas. The net zero case achieves nearly 70% renewable energy in 2050, with the remainder coming from nuclear and gas with carbon capture. You'll see that the hybrid fuel plant really only generates as we get closer to 2050. This is because it has a very high cost and we don't use it until we need to fully eliminate emissions. In 100% renewables, wind and solar grow very rapidly, with wind alone delivering 2/3 of our energy in 2050. And that hybrid fuel plant has to generate much more often to maintain reliability.